Coming up on episode 113 of the Behind the Back podcast, the Philadelphia Eagles, man, I say this every single time we get on this freaking pod. There's just no shortage of drama, and the drama is turns towards my boy Jalen Hurts. So stay tuned to what I have to say about his 5-turnover performance, and with all the discourse around the Philadelphia social media, Philadelphia media in general, national media, is a bit overblown on my boy Jalen Hurts. And then we pivot on over to San Francisco, where they preview their matchup with the dominating Titans. After coming off of the bye, the Niners looking fresh, ready to go at a home matchup. Ben breaks down those keys for that game. And then we pivot on over to Sacramento. We do an experiment here. We do a trade experiment. It's that time of year. The Kings are announcing, hey, let's get rid of some of these guys. I think we're going to be open here. So Ben and I give our favorite trade options for this season. All right, guys, with that being said, let's get it. All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Behind the Back podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Marcos Conan, and beside me here, as always, is Ben, the Jet Reds. Ben, you had the bye week off. It's cold over here in the 916, but how you feeling, brother? How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I got to watch some stress-free football on Sunday and Monday, and I'm feeling pretty good. So I'm ready to get back into the final stretch here.
Heck yeah, the dog days of the year are here. The home stretch, guys. We've been waiting to get to this point of the season where every game matters a little bit more, and every loss matters a little bit more. And if you guys heard in the intro, we got some exciting and depressing stuff to talk about today, and we're going to start with some depressing stuff. We're staying in Philadelphia for this one, and they suffered a really, really, really tough overtime loss against the Chargers. For you guys who want to see me be a little bit depressed, go check out my post game on the feed. But, my takeaway from the game, obviously the big news was Jalen Hurts had 5 turnovers. No one's going to let any Eagles fan forget that for probably the rest of the year, right? And moving forward when it comes to Jalen Hurts. But I think that overall the Eagles were very much in that game. They had control of that game and they let it slip away. But, you've witnessed some games from your own, quarterback where he had played less than stellar. Seeing that performance by Hurts, do you have any, do you take anything major away from that performance?
Not really. And the biggest reason is you saw Purdy have a bad, multi-turnover game, immediately bounce back. You saw Stafford have a multi-turnover bad game, bounce back immediately. You see it from Josh Allen. You see it from a bunch of these quarterbacks. So, the immediate reaction is always going to be like, he was trash. Right? He was terrible, right? And let's call it how it is. Jalen was trash in that game. I think there was some unfortunate things too, where like if you just look at that final drive, if AJ catches that ball, then that final interception doesn't happen, and you guys walk away with a win, right? And if AJ, makes the catch on the other play, then it's not a tip drill and an interception. So like, there's factors that play into these things. And, you can say that about all these other quarterbacks with all these other bad games, but the reaction from the national media, the reaction from even Philadelphia media has been really wild to me.
And that's a great point to pivot off of, because that's been the story from this week. And obviously when any QB plays that bad, that is a story worth talking about. And I think that, like you said, A.J. Brown had a couple missed opportunities in this game. Devontae Smith, when I rewatched the game, Devontae Smith slips on one of Jalen's interceptions. So it's like the opportunities were there. Jalen did not play a great game, but there was opportunities that were missed by his guys. And I think that it's gotten to this point in Philadelphia media, and I'm going to, we'll talk a little bit about, kind of why I think we are at this place. But you turn on the radio shows on Monday, you go and watch national broadcasts, and you go on to the Philly WIP, 94 WIP, the local radio station, and there are conversations about benching Jalen Hurts for backup Tanner McKee right now. And it's crazy to think that 10 months removed from him being a Super Bowl MVP and the Super Bowl champion, that Jalen Hurts is being viewed in this light where there's a portion of fans that believe this too. There's a divide right now in Philadelphia. There's let's go Tanner McKee, Jalen Hurts sucks. And then the other guys like myself who have always been, Jalen's number one guy. I love him over here. But I think this is overblown. Obviously, it's ridiculous to think that you're going to bench Jalen Hurts. And I think that everyone needs to just stop with that's the hard part nowadays in sports, in the sports, media, when people post on X or Reddit or anything like that, for the fans of it all, right? It's just toxic commentary, overreactions, knee-jerk nonsense. And I think that when it comes to Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni, you can say what you want about them. They can have their flaws. But if you pull up their Pro Football Reference page, they've been one of the most successful duos in the past 5 years. They've been to 2 Super Bowls. They've won 1. And I think that, and not to mention, they've never missed the playoffs. So it's one of those things that this team is successful all the time. But I think the fans, especially, and it's Philadelphia, fans are crazy over there. And that's for all their sports team, baseball, the Sixers. That's just how it is. It's a nut city for sports. But it's kind of ridiculous that this is the reaction we're getting when I thought that half of when I thought that more Eagles fans were a little bit smarter than this, because you're not going to give up. If you bench Jalen Hurts, that's it for Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia. And I don't understand what more he has to prove to earn any more grace. You talk about all these other quarterbacks, you want to throw them in the same conversation. I hear Cowboys fans, Dak Prescott throwing for 350 yards. Yeah, Jalen can't do that. Josh Allen, he has 6 touchdowns. Jalen can't do that. Okay. And then when I say, okay, well, what about Super Bowl? Oh, no, you can't bring up the Super Bowl. Why not? That's the whole point of this, right? So for me, as a football fan, I've been watching the Eagles since I was 9 years old. It's been 20 plus years now because I'm an unk. It's my entire time here. I got to witness both Super Bowls. I understand why Eagles fans are jumping the gun here on this Tanner McKee thing. Nick Foles won us a Super Bowl as a backup to Carson Wentz. There was comparisons earlier in the year to Jalen Hurts to Carson Wentz just a couple weeks ago. So the fact that people are like, oh, Tanner McKee, tall, slow, white guy with an arm. He's Nick Foles 2.0. Let's just throw him in there. He can win because we've had it happen before. And I don't think there's going to be another city, in a situation like ours that would have this level of controversy if the backup didn't win before. So I do think that's a part of it. And I don't blame people for saying that. But I do think it's just a ridiculous notion that Jalen Hurts, who's done everything in the book outside of, and I think part of the Jalen Hurts fatigue with people, with Eagles fans, outside fans from Eagles fans, is that I was one of these people who was pushing the narrative in the offseason that Jalen Hurts won the Super Bowl. He should be considered a top 5 quarterback. And I think that's where the disconnect is here. I think Eagles fans now have returned kind of a little bit down to earth from that high from the Super Bowl. And it's like, okay, Jalen may not put up the numbers, may not, do some of these things that these top 5 guys can do with the arm talent and, Lamar's breakaway speed still and things like that, right? But then we go back to the comparisons of what have all of these guys outside of Patrick Mahomes and Matt Stafford have done? What have they done to justify this praise? Win a ton of regular season games, put up a ton of regular season stats, win the regular season awards? All of that's cool. All of that's great. But as a fan, me personally, I prefer my team to win. And whoever is in charge of this, whoever is leading this team as my quarterback is the guy I ride with. And he is, and has proven time and time again, year after year, he has yet to miss the playoffs. He hasn't, he just wins. And I understand that, the clutch gene and trying to turn things, turn it on in certain moments here, that is a fluky, inconsistent thing to live off of. But I think, this narrative that if Jalen Hurts throws the ball more than 30 times, you're guaranteed to lose, the Eagles is crazy. He's 22-14 when he's in his career, when he's had to throw the ball more than 30 times. He's 0-4 this year. This year it hasn't worked. This year, the 3 games that we've given A.J. Brown the ball and changed our offense a little bit to kind of cater to him, we've lost. And it's not all on AJ. It's not all on Jalen. It's not all on Kevin Patullo. It's not all on Saquon or the offensive line. It's a collective issue. And I think that's where people are trying to just throw blame. They're trying to pick one when this is a blame pie with multiple pieces here. And I think that's the biggest like gripe I have with this is people are killing Jalen for a bad game, for a bad month of football, and saying like, I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat it. He's had 7 total touchdowns and 8 turnovers in the past 5 games. That's not successful. That's not conducive. That's not going to win you games. That's cost us games. Obviously, we've lost 3 straight. But to just assume like, oh man, he had this bad run, that's all he is such revisionist history from a guy who has consistently won, in big moments against all your big name quarterbacks, except Justin Herbert. Sorry, but like, I hate that. But he's proven time and time again that he's a gamer in the biggest moments, biggest spots, and he made a couple big clutch throws before he threw that tough interception. But he hit a 3rd and 16, on a dot to Devontae on a play that we got a penalty on where we're like, oh, well, there goes the drive. We're screwed here. And he just rifles it in. And then he had the best throw of the season to AJ Brown, who dropped it in the ball and like in his hands. Great defense. He did get the arm there, but AJ, you're a top 5 guy. I said this on the post game. You're a top 5 guy. You catch that ball if it's in your hands. So it's like, we're in a spot where if some of those plays hit, we're talking about this game. Like, yeah, it was a bad game, but he did it again. So that's my rant on, my guy, Jalen Hurts, because like, I'm just tired of, this is going to be an ongoing thing for Jalen in his whole career. You, of all people, with the Brock Purdy slander that you've had to go through over the past few years, should understand this a little bit. And for those who want to discredit Jalen for his lack of, oh, he can't read. That's the other thing. Like, oh, he's like a one progression guy. Like, and you can tell he was like a step off. The hardest part about Jalen, the hardest thing that Jalen has had to do throughout his football career is adjust to different play callers every single year. That's been a known thing. He's got a new guy every year, right? Everyone knows this, but he never receives the same level of grace as Matt Stafford, who has played with Sean McVay for the past 5 years, and, Dak Prescott, who's been in the same system for the past 5 years. Like, you have continuity there, which makes players better. Like, I guarantee, like, in 2 or 3 years, we're going to see Brock Purdy be a master of this Kyle Shanahan system in a way that, like, I don't even think you would have been prepared for, because that comes with experience. Jalen Hurts every year is changing something, is forced to do something different, go away from some of the things that he likes to do to cater to, the new play caller. Sure. And I think that, when we as fans think it's easy as like, oh, if you just incorporate this, do the under center play action, attack the middle of the field, do all this. In theory, that should make sense. But the Eagles, when did like the Niners offense, when does the Seahawks, like those kind of offenses that rely on timing, where's all that timing developed? In the offseason, through failure in the regular season, in the early stages. But that's stuff you've been working on all summer. That's stuff you've been working on for a couple of years now when you're developing into a system. They don't do that. And I think that's part of the disconnect for this Eagles offense is like they haven't done anything. They're just a team trying to put stuff together, and that's where we run into some issues.
Oh, I think it's you're nailing it there. And I think to build on that, you've also played 8 playoff teams in your 13 games so far this season. So you're trying to put it together against all these tough opponents. And, you got a winning record. You're leading your division. You're, up there in the NFC. You've got the home field advantage, in the playoffs right now. That's not going away. It's essentially a lock. So I agree with you. Like the notion or the idea that the Eagles should or could bench Jalen Hurts it's mind-boggling to me. That's just stupid. It's a sense of it's the biggest form of frustration, I think, is the biggest thing coming out right now. It's a frustration that's boiled over from consistently swapping out those offensive coordinators, not finding a consistent rhythm throughout the year. You guys have had to win games in different ways throughout this entire season. And, when you look at how this Philadelphia Eagles team has won in the Sirianni, Jalen Hurts era, it's been a lot of that. You guys haven't. Last year was the only year that I've really seen the Eagles consistently win in the same fashion. I haven't seen that in the other, it's been 5 years, right? 5 years that those two have been together. And that's not to say that that's a Jalen problem. That's not to say it's a Sirianni problem. It's what you were talking about there. It's the offensive coordinator problem. Like, and it's not Patullo. It's the fact that Patullo can't stack seasons. It's the fact that none of these guys, Kellen Moore can't stack a season. If you got another season of Kellen Moore, you guys would probably be first in the NFC again. Like, this is the part of it that I think there's a level of frustration that makes a ton of sense. I get why this frustration is known and why this is happening, but it's misplaced. It's 100% misplaced. There's so many problems with this Philly offense that is just a product of inconsistencies. Yeah, you have stars all over the place, but when your stars are constantly having to adjust and shift new anything and everything, it's not going to be a recipe for success. So it's misplaced. I think you're definitely nailing it with this coordinator stuff. I feel you. I get you, because you and I had this conversation off the pod. Like, if Brock Purdy won that Super Bowl in 23, and then they had the same season that they had last year, nobody would talk about the injuries. They would just say Brock Purdy's trash, and that, he should be benched, and, next guy up, he's a product of the system. He doesn't enhance it. He doesn't make it better, yada, yada, yada. This is just a reality that what's interesting enough that our two franchises, our two fan bases share a commonality in. So yeah, this whole thing is wildly overblown in my opinion and misplaced.
I think, moving forward, and, for you Eagles fans out there who want to crap on my QB, on our QB, on Jalen Hurts, stay on that side if that's what you're really feeling after he has a performance like this. A rare performance, by the way. He's only had 3 games where he's had 3 or more interceptions in it. There are plenty of quarterbacks who have had more. So I just, I won multiple games of 3+ interceptions. Peyton Manning had 6 interceptions in a game. No one's saying, oh, we should have benched him. Patrick Mahomes had a 19 passer rating with 3 interceptions last game. Do the Chiefs have a Mahomes problem? Do they need to bench him for Carson Wentz? I don't know. I'm just kidding. Carson's not on the team anymore. But that's where the discourse, and same with the Niners, right? Like Mac Jones, let's throw in Mac. He's better than Brock. He's winning. Like all this stuff. Like, you're in a tough spot because that's, the thought about Tanner McKee is he is a very unproven commodity that people just want to see. They don't know. He hasn't played meaningful minutes. Mac Jones has played meaningful minutes, has played a playoff game. Like he's done those things. So there's more of an argument there, even though Brock has been, to the NFC Championship twice and Super Bowl. So it's like pedigree doesn't really matter to them, right? I mean, everyone, people want to say those Cowboys teams that went 12-5 3 straight years, those Cowboys fans act like those teams were trash when they had a top 5 defense and a top 5 offense at the same time and didn't deliver with Dak Prescott as their quarterback. But when Jalen does it, he's getting carried by a super team that was set up by Howie, when Jerry Jones literally did that for 3 years and he actually cooked and they couldn't do anything with it. So that's the part where, like, they discredit our guys for doing the things that their QBs can't and think it's and when a lot of things have to go our way for our quarterbacks to be in those situations too. 2023 happened for y'all because for once you guys were healthy. Like that, you guys were able, you were able to be healthy, right? And for the Eagles, same thing. 22, we were incredibly healthy. 24, incredibly healthy. So like we had that on our side. And, that's a lot of teams just don't, they go through that every year. We're seeing this all the time. Like injuries affect everything. And the teams that usually make it to the end are the most healthy teams. So it's just like, we've had that on our side. We've regressed a lot. We've had injuries all over throughout the season. And I just think that like the Eagles don't get enough credit for what they do because they're being compared to, I don't even know what they're being compared to. They're being compared to this impossible standard when we've been to 2 of the past 3 Super Bowls and won one of those and took Mahomes to the very end on the first one. So it's like, for me as a fan, I'm satisfied with whatever this team does. Like I said, it's hard. And a lot of people say it's not like it's new, but it's hard to go back to back. It's hard to just maintain success like this when we were already kind of at the edge of that like 5-year window that most teams have when they get to this point. Players get older. They're not as fresh. They're not as athletic. You know, the father time catches up to some of these teams, and you need a little bit of a mouthwash off season, reset, rinse a little bit. And that's what's going to happen to the Eagles this year. They're going to look very different next year. And I thought that it was going to be a product of, what's it called? I thought it was going to be a product of disdain amongst the locker room. But then you watch some clips on Hard Knocks and things like that, and it doesn't seem like these guys hate each other. I think they're miserable with the fact that they're not living up to the standards that they want. And that's different than what it was in 2023 when it was all like, does Jalen Hurts even like Nick Sirianni? Those were the conversations happening then versus now it's like everyone's trying to figure this out. So does that mean that that's gonna guarantee that they're gonna fix this? No. Does it start this week with the Raiders? Yes. Am I worried about this game against the Raiders? Yes. Not because I don't think we can be that we can't beat the Raiders, but now they've created the social, the media and the players' lack of performance has created this pressure, on them. And they're either going to fold because they've lost the last 3 games, or they're going to bounce back and maybe ceremoniously keep winning, or it's going to end in a dud in first round in the playoffs. But what happens this week, I think, is going to define the rest of the season, no matter what happens. Because if you lose this game, if the Eagles lose this game to the freaking Las Vegas Raiders with Kenny Pickett as their starting quarterback, Super Bowl champion Kenny Pickett as their starting quarterback, I don't know what else. There's no more excuses I can make for this team. You cannot lose to a 2-11 team at this point of the season with what just happened. If you had won these past 3 games, this is a trap game. You can lose it. I get that. So a little bit of history. Go back to 2023. The Eagles lost to the Seattle Seahawks in overtime on a Monday night game 2 years ago as of the 8th of December. So they lost to Drew Lock in overtime, right? The very next week, they were 11.5-point favorites to the Arizona Cardinals. So the Eagles in this game, coming off of an overtime disappointing road loss on Monday night, are going to be 11.5-point favorites to the Raiders. So it's setting up for, the table is set now. Is the collapse here? Is it going to happen again? I think people understand that the Chargers game was a tough road game against a good team. They're 9-4, broken hand Herbert, be damned. They played their ass off and it was a good performance. But when we look at this Raiders team, they're just a team trying to get through the end of the season at this point. I don't even think they're trying to play spoiler anymore. You got Max Crosby just sticking it out there like the loyal guy he is. And then, offensively, you have Kenny Pickett, Ashton Genty, Brock Bowers, and then a bunch of rando skill players. Now, I'm not trying to be disrespectful to the Raiders. I was kind of hyped about y'all. I thought Pete Carroll, Gino was going to give him a bump. It didn't work out that way, right? But this is the most winnable game that you have. This is but it's also added with the pressure. The fact that if you go 3 and out on that first drive, you're going to get booed because these Philly fans are freaking crazy. But it's a game that I'm not even gonna this is gonna be real quick when it comes to the Eagles Raiders, because this is a tale of 2 teams that the Eagles need to win. They have to win, and I think they will, but I don't think it's gonna be the way that everyone wants it to. I think that this is coming off of some rest. You're coming off a short rest, and it got even shorter because you went to OT on Monday night and you went to the very end of OT. And you have to fly across the country. You're coming from LA back to Philly. It's not like a short flight. So you're doing that on short rest. You should be able to beat the Raiders, but you're going to have that pressure and those kind of things working against you. You had to stab the positivity bunny to death in the locker room. It's no longer there. For those who I didn't address this on the post games. The Eagles on Saturday put up an inflatable Easter bunny to put up vibes, to increase the vibes in the locker room, only to put out this terrible performance that they did. It is now removed. It would have been one of those marketing strategies that had they won, and that's the thing that they used to peel off some wins, sell the bunnies, all that crap, right? But the vibes could not be any more tense for the offense. The defense is cooking, and the defense is going to be able to feast on some of these opponents we're going to be playing here towards the end of the year. And that starts against Kenny Pickett. Are we going to have him seeing ghosts against his old team? He does know the Vic Fangio defense. He practiced against it quite a bit last year as our backup quarterback. So that is something to monitor. You're playing against a guy who understands our system and our weak spots. Now it's going to be up to Kenny Pickett to deliver. He doesn't have a great O-line. Astrodenti doesn't have a great O-line either. But they were able to play a good game last week against the Broncos. They played the Broncos close. That's just how it works. But the Eagles are one of those teams, very much like the Broncos, who let their defense do the talking and hope that the offense can just light it up when it matters most. And I do think that is the identity of this Eagles team. And I do think we're not going to be seeing much more improvement. I think the only way we see Eagles winning these blowing out opponents is if those what-if plays that we talk about every game actually hit again. That's what we're talking about. If AJ doesn't drop those balls, if Saquon breaks off more runs, he had a 52-yarder last game off of a fake tush push. So, if you can generate some of those explosive plays again, we're looking at different scores. But the fact that it always comes down to, them needing to hit 3 or 4 plays instead of creating, 15 opportunities for themselves, that's the world that they choose to live in. This Eagles defense just showed against Justin Herbert, against a bad O-line, what they can do. They can keep you in this game, and they're probably going to lock up their receivers all game with the way our corners have been playing too. So every week now, my emphasis is going to be this offense, because this defense has always done their part this year, even if they've bent a little bit. So the Eagles can win this game, and they should win this game very easily. I don't think the Raiders are putting up more than 10 points in this game. So if I'm doing a score, I think the Eagles, who have yet to put up 20 points in the past 5 weeks, scares me. But I have them putting up 24 points. I have this being 24-10. Now, I'm trying to say that with my chest. I'm trying to be 10 toes down on it. This could be a lose-lose in the sense that, all we want is the win. But if we beat the Raiders 16-13, nothing's going to change. The conversation isn't going to change. So that's kind of where we're at with the Raiders game. So 24-10, emphatically, defense is going to show up, have Kenny Goes throw a pick. Jalen's going to play solid, a couple touchdowns, and that'll be it. And the offense is going to stall and punt a lot, and then we'll still win the game. But that's how I feel about this Raiders game.
So I've got the Eagles winning as well, and I like the 24 number. I think 10 points is nice. That's nice for a defense to hold any team to 10. 10 feels nice. I'm gonna say 13, but I wouldn't be surprised with 10 either, because you're right. That defense has been incredible for the Eagles all season long, especially as of late. Now, you mentioned something that I was already thinking about for a while here, and it was right at the end here. You mentioned a lose-lose. My side of this lose-lose is you guys can go out and win this game by 42 points. Nobody gives a shit because it's the Raiders, right? People are just going to chalk it up and say, okay, this is the worst team in football right now. This is the 32nd team in the power rankings. You should be winning this game. At the very least, your defense should be winning this game for you. So we don't care that you win by 40 points. I agree. You win by 3 points. It's even more of a lose in a lot of ways, right? Because it's you squeak this one out. If you lose to them, chalk it up, because everybody's going to be calling for everyone to be traded, everyone to be fired. Heads are going to roll. It's going to be wild. I don't see a scenario where the Eagles lose this game, because I don't think their defense has the capabilities of allowing 3 guys who are still pretty unproven throughout their careers to just roll over them. I just don't see it happening. And then this offense is capable enough against defenses in general to put up enough points to get a win. They've showed it. It's ugly ways of doing it. So against this Raiders team, I don't think it's going to be a struggle to put points on the board, and I don't think it's going to be a struggle to stop them necessarily. But I also don't think it's going to be broken open from the get-go. I think there's a possibility of seeing a 3-and-out to start the game, because Philly leads the league in those right now. This isn't a pretty offense to watch operate. Let's call it how it is. But this is also an offense that as the game goes on, even Kevin Patullo kind of figures out the defense a little bit. He starts to kind of settle in. Once things settle in, you start to get some of these plays that break open. I thought especially that Saquon play, the fake tush push. It's like, why are you running a fake tush push? Oh, but it broke open for 50-some yards and a touchdown, right? So it's like, that's nice. These kind of things are spicy. They're swaggy. These are the things you want to see from these teams. So I don't expect this to be much of a ball game. It's just, let's call it how it is. Like I said, it's a lose-lose, but getting a win is a win in football, and a win in football means you're stacking, and it's something to get you back on track, because right now you guys are on a really bad losing streak that I know wants to be snapped. So, yeah, man, like I said, I think 24-13 feels about right for me.
And I just wanted to do a quick check on the weather. It's not going to be pretty. It's going to be a high of 31 with a low of 21, and there's an 80% chance of precipitation. So could potentially be a little, chilly, potential some snow, some sleet there. So I still think 24 points is achievable, even with, some issues. If anything, that might make the ground game a little easier, right? But it's going to be another cold game, so don't expect, I trust, and that's also something I want to say too. I trust Jalen Hurts. I go to bat for him every week. I'm his biggest defender on, whenever we're in our group chat or whatever. I can't help it. I believe in my guy, and I'm a results-driven guy. This dude has shown a lot of things that most other quarterbacks can't do. And he's also shown his limitations. But you can still be limited and win, and that's all he's done. So, maximizing his strengths has not been the strength of this team, because they've, with all the fluctuation. But I believe in Jalen Hurts, and I don't think that, he doesn't need to come out and have 5 touchdowns to make up for everything. He just needs to play the game that we know he can play. And I don't mind him taking some shots. Like we saw on, for example, that 3rd and 16 to Devontae. That's something that if you just did a few more of those, consistently and develop that rhythm, I think, Philly fans would be less pissy about it, because you're going to throw interceptions there. That happens, right? But I think that, when it works, then you're like, oh, he can do it. No crap. He's always been, it's just one of those things that, again, if they spent a whole offseason doing this stuff, it would probably look much, much better. And I don't know if another OC change, which I hope for, no offense, because I do think that there is someone out there a little bit more creative and a little bit better for this, right? But, I also don't think that just fixes everything next year either, unless it's guaranteed that whoever we bring on board is here for multiple years. And with offensive coordinators in the NFL, that's just not how it works. When your team is always in the playoffs and always winning, Kevin Patullo was getting interviews still. There's something about being on a winning team that still gets you checked out. So, we have the worst OC in the league by, look standards, and people still want him. They're still going to interview him as a head coach, because the Eagles are a good team. So that's just the world we live in. Okay, enough of this. Let's go over to San Francisco, to the best team on the pod, because it's about time for this, So you guys got the bye week. You're playing, frisky, sneaky, potential trap game in the Tennessee Titans at home. So before we get into the game itself, was there any news coming out of the bye week that we should know of?
Yeah, so the 49ers are seemingly getting healthier. Tatum Bethune, Yetur Gross-Matos, Sam Okuanu are all nearing a comeback. Their practice windows are opening up soon. Yetur Gross-Matos opens up tomorrow. Tatum and Sam will kind of see. I don't know how likely it is that the 3 of them play. But nonetheless, getting that bye week it's stacking a week of rest. You're able to kind of, reset and get your bodies back. If you think back right before the bye, even Kyle Juszczyk went down with the ribs injury, and he's questionable right now. We'll see if he's able to go. I'd be surprised if he doesn't. If he doesn't, that's okay. Run 2 tight end set. We can do that. But the benefit of having a bye week this late in the season is kind of what we talked about in the offseason. That's, you get to kind of get healthy going into the final stretch towards, the playoffs here. And that's kind of where the 49ers are at. So from a health perspective, and then, obviously getting our boy back, Eddie Pinedo, man, he's back. We waived Matt Gay. We appreciate the game that Matt played for us. You know, he was needed. He knocked him down. It was good. Everything was great, but your services are no longer needed because we got Pinedo back. So hyped about that. Special teams is back to full function. So things are on the up and up. As for signings, so like I said, Matt Gay released. Adrian Martinez was also released from the practice squad. He's a backup quarterback. Because we brought in wide receiver Javon Baker. Now, Javon Baker was originally drafted 4th round by the Patriots in 2024. When drafted, he went on record saying, "Come to the home stadium and bring your popcorn. Bring your popcorn. I make people in wheelchairs stand up." So dude's confidence is off the charts, and you know, kind of rightfully so. You know, he ended up being on the Eagles practice squad. He was never really called up. I'm curious to see how much of a run he gets. You know, he went to college in UCF. He was somewhere else as well. Off the top of my head, I can't remember. But he's a big frame, long wingspan. He tends to get open on the same kind of routes that the 49ers, you know, tend to kind of gravitate towards from an offensive play calling perspective. And those are those curl routes, the in-breaking routes, vertical routes. So his style, the kind of style of receiver that he is somebody that, to be honest with you, the 49ers would greatly benefit from if he's, you know, as advertised. Will he get the run in Kyle Shanahan's system? Who knows? Because, you know, you still got guys out here in like Jordan Watkins, for instance, who can't touch the field. And then you got a running back in Jordan James who can't touch the field. You know, so you look at Isaac Grenda, who had a great season last year. He's MIA entirely this year. So Kyle likes to lean on guys who he knows are going to make plays for him consistently, and he doesn't really go much outside of that. We'll see what this signing means for the 49ers in the long term. Personally, I like it a lot. You know, I like the signing. I think it's good depth. You struggled with wide receiver depth all season long. This is something that helps with that as you get into this home stretch. This is a guy that, in a lot of senses, just from the way he plays, his build and everything, like I said, he fits the scheme and the style of the 49ers offense really well. So we'll see about what that looks like, but these are the biggest things coming out of the bye week. So let's pivot now and talk about this matchup. Now, the Eagles are playing the Raiders, who are the 32nd ranked team in the NFL right now. Well, the Tennessee Titans are the 31st ranked team. So we've got some absolute barn burners ahead of us, boys. Let's be real. The Titans are having a rough season. You know, they fired head coach Brian Callahan. They got interim head coach Mike McCoy in now. This Titans team hasn't seen a defense worse than top 12 in the NFL all season long. That's tough. That's a tough schedule for a for the most part, young team with the exception to a few veterans. This 49ers defense hasn't played a ton of high-power offenses this year outside of maybe 4 or 5 games. And I'm not going to say that the Titans are a high-power offense. I think that the best way to describe the Titans offensively are battle-tested. The reason I say that is because they've seen a lot of these top defenses. So going against the 49ers defense, who, you know, they've found ways to tighten up. They've played really well in terms of the bend, don't break aspect of the game. But there's holes, right? There's holes in this defense. You look at all the injuries and the places that they've had to fill. There's ways to exploit this defense. So you could theoretically see from a Titans perspective how they could operate in a way that kind of breaks this game open and they find some success. That's going to be one of the things to kind of keep an eye on in this one. But, you know, this Titans O-line and the offensive unit in general, it might be battle-tested enough to make it interesting. So Tony Pollard, running back, he's coming off of a big game last week. He had 161 yards for 2 touchdowns, but he's only got 4 touchdowns on the season. So, you know, he got half of his touchdowns all in one game. He is by far their best rushing option this season. It's not even close. But even still, their red zone offense flutters. And you can tell just based on the fact he's got 4 rushing touchdowns. Tony Pollard's a good running back. But schematically, I don't think they're using him properly. And I think there's a whole lot of reasons why, they've kind of came up short in a lot of ways this season. But, there's Tony Pollard is still somebody you got to kind of pay attention to from a defensive standpoint, because he can, we've seen it when he was on the Cowboys. We've seen it now with the Tennessee Titans. Like, there are ways he can exploit you. So we'll see what Tony can do. Cam Ward, I really like Cam Ward. I liked him coming out of college. I liked him going into the NFL. But he's had a rough season so far. This, in my book, isn't a bad quarterback. I don't think Cam Ward is a bad quarterback by any stretch. I think his organization has done him short. I think the guys around him have done him short. I think there's a level of, unluckiness that is played into it, especially with the injuries, especially like look at Calvin Ridley, who's out on IR now with his fibula injury. So, you just kind of look at the early returns in Cam Ward's career, and it's been unfortunate, I think is the best way to describe it. So nonetheless, this is a good quarterback that you can't just say he's going to hand you the football and you're going to be able to go out there and get him off the field in 3 downs. You still got to play this guy like he's a legit quarterback, because he can make plays. He can make plays through the air. He can make plays on the ground. He's a good guy. So his number one option right now is seemingly tight end Chig Okonkwo. I'm bad with that name. I've personally, I've heard his name before, hadn't heard of him until this season, but he is like their sole option through the air this season. He's been really good in route running. He's been really good in utilization of yards after catch. His yards after contact is really good as well. He's a big body. He's gonna go out there and he's gonna try and just hit you first and hit you harder. It's a very George Kittle style of play. So I like him. I think he's going to be somebody that the 49ers need to kind of game plan for and plan this thing around him. And seemingly, if you can shut down Cam Ward, Tony Pollard, and Chig, you run a great chance of winning this game. So, like I said, Calvin Ridley is on IR. They've got 8 players on IR. You want to talk about that unluckiness? I mean, 49ers, we kind of know how that feels like too. But 8 players on IR is pretty wild. And that wide receiver room, we also know how this feels in Tennessee in general has been banged up this year as well. So defensively, the Titans, their best playmaker is linebacker Cedric Gray. He leads the team in total tackles. He's at 128 total tackles on the season. To put that in perspective, the next closest on their team is safety Amani Hooker, who has 69. And then Cody Barton, their other linebacker, has 67. So I had to, bro. So, there are guys who can make plays. Their linebacker core is pretty decent. On the edge, you've got Jeffrey Simmons, who's, he's a threat at any given point. He's having a good year. He's got 8 sacks, 12 tackles for loss on 11 games played. So, even Cody Barton, like I just said, he's good in coverage. He's got 3 picks this year. So they have guys on defense who can make plays. But with Jarius Sneed, he's out on IR. They've got guys on IR right now that otherwise would make this defense a little more interesting. So I'm going to kind of get into the keys to win here after all that being said, but I want to toss it over to you. This Tennessee team, kind of a mess, up and down. They're on and up. They just beat the Browns last week. It was a pretty nice game, honestly. All things said and done. What are your thoughts on this game going into it?
I think this is a game that you guys have every advantage. You're checking all the boxes. I don't think this is a trap game because you're coming out of the bye, right? And you obviously addressed, how good Kyle Shanahan is off of extended time. So I do think the Niners are gonna, I think that the Niners are gonna come out with they're going to come out feeling good. There's a lot at stake. I mean, you guys are still very much in the running for that number 1 seed, so there is going to be a sense of urgency. Because if you guys just do your thing and win out, you're going to be in a really, really, really good spot, potentially, depending on how the Rams do and how the Seahawks do. So I think that it's great that you end up with the schedule that you'd have for this next couple of weeks. And I want to ask you a question on one of these other teams here in a minute because we got big news in the league. But I think that I think for the Titans, I think that there are a boomer bust kind of team in terms of like you can't let them get hot, but I do think Salah's defensive game plan is just going to eat up a rookie quarterback. I think he's going to have him seeing ghosts. I think he's going to put him in. He's going to show him things that he hasn't seen yet at this stage of the season either. So I think that Cam Ward I liked coming out of college. Obviously the number 1 overall pick. So there's still a lot going into it, and they have a couple young guys like I know you mentioned their tight end and Tony Pollard, but I know I like Iomanner, the rookie from Stanford, and they also have a Chirozi Dike, I think is his name, who's been like a special teams demon making big plays. So I think there's like other guys. They're starting to kind of get a little bit of cohesion, and that's good for them. But I think that the Niners will be able to kind of big brother them a little bit in this game. I think the offense, so long as they can control Jeffrey Simmons, that's if they can, just double team him all game, and I think it'll be pretty easy going for this Niners offense. So I like your guys' chances in this one for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, you make a really good point. There's a ton to play for. This 49ers team, they can be the first seed. They can still, they can still find themselves on the outside looking in this playoff picture. This is a constantly shifting NFC. And at this point, like anything is up in the air. I think they run about a 90% chance now after the bye and all things said and done of making the playoffs. So you can call it a lock. You still got to go out there and you got to take care of your business. You got to, still cross your I's and dot your T's, right? So ton to play for. 49ers off of bye, like you said, and like I said previously, like this is a team that tends to lock in just a little bit deeper. And so I agree with you. I think there's going to be a level of, we don't really care who's in front of us. We're going to play our best game regardless. If you do that, this game won't be close. The spread in this is 13.5 points. I can see, I can see a 16 plus game if this 49ers team really gets rolling and starts off early hot. And that's getting into my first key, which is come out hot. This is the time to really gain some momentum, ride that momentum. You're on a win streak right now. You've got every reason why you can continue this win streak. If you can start this game out hot, give yourself a cushion in this game and just continue to ride that from there on out, like you're setting yourself up for not just an easy game, but you're setting yourself up for, a fourth quarter where you could potentially throw some guys to the side, let them rest and get ready for the next week. So come out hot and come out ready. Second key to the game and last key of the game. Offense needs to be smart with the football and take what the Titans defense gives you. There's going to be options. There's going to be plays to be made there. This is a Titans defense, yes, who has playmakers, but this is a Titans defense who also makes a ton of mistakes. So take advantage of what they give you. This is an offense under Kyle Shanahan who now, you kind of alluded to it earlier. This is an offense who's been together for a minute now. They've been able to stack some wins. They've been able to stack some seasons together. You should be able to exploit a team like this, in this kind of a scenario. Call it a trap game if you want. I'm not even looking at it as in a trap game scenario like that because I don't think the 49ers have positioned themselves in a way to feel like they're in a trap scenario. You've also taken care of business and gotten wins where you otherwise may not have. I.e. the Rams earlier in the season. Therefore, you give yourself a cushion where it's like you lose this game, damn, that sucks, but you can still rally. And you've got the Colts coming up here in just a short amount of time who have Phillip Rivers now at quarterback. So that's going to be a wild breakdown. But I'm excited for this game. So my score prediction in this one, the weather in Santa Clara is going to be a high of 63. And it's going to be nice and sunny. So you ain't got nothing to worry about from a rain game perspective, nothing like that. So I think this is going to be the high scoring game. I think the 49ers are going to find themselves putting up around 35 points. And I think this Titans, offense is going to find some ways to kind of get on the board, maybe in the first drive or two of the game. But Robert Saleh is going to lock in. He's going to stop some things coming out of halftime. And I don't expect them to put up more than maybe 17 points. So I'm going to say 35-17 49ers.
That's a great score. I couldn't agree more with you. I think that, the Niners are in a great place now, playing some of their best ball, getting into a rhythm, and they're coming off of a bye week, and they're even fresher than some, these guys are going into this point. Getting that late bye, I guess the argument is like it may kill momentum, but I think that what you guys need was always you guys always could use a little bit more rest to get some guys back. So you guys are in a good spot, and I agree that it's going to be. I think that you guys at home, crowd's going to go nuts. Weather's going to be perfect. It's going to be a perfect setting for the Niners to have a blowout game. I'm going to go 31-14. I think that, Cam Ward's going to have good moments, but I do think that it's going to be kind of like they're going to want to get out of there as soon as possible kind of game for the Titans. They're going to want to just, take the beating and leave and, get out of there and enjoy the Santa Clara weather after that game. So, yeah, definitely have the Niners there winning big. So, do you have any final thoughts on the Niners before we head out here? I wanted to ask you a question, actually, regarding your future matchup, with the Colts, because Phillip Rivers, that's the big news around the NFL. 44-year-old Phillip Rivers has joined the fold following the Daniel Jones torn Achilles. Does that, obviously it's an unknown at this point. Are you worried about a 44-year-old Phillip Rivers?
No, but thank God I get to see him play before we actually get to see him, because Phillip Rivers against Seahawks is going to be interesting, because that's a Seahawks team who's really good defensively. I'm a little bit worried for Phillip Rivers, but this is going to be a good way to kind of see where he's at. We haven't seen him since 2020 when the last time he played. And this is a guy who's a dog, right? He's been a dog for years. He's a guy who played a game on like a torn ACL back in like 2007. He tore his ACL in a playoff game. They won. Then he plays the next week on the torn ACL. They lost that game, but he still had a good game, and it just showed kind of the grit that guy has. So I'm not surprised that bro's out here, you put me in, coach. I'm here to play, especially for the Colts. I know that was the last team he was on. So we'll see. I find it interesting, and I got to say, too, I kind of feel for the Colts. They started out hot, you kind of questioned how good they'd be because of the matchups that they had and strength of schedule and so on and so forth, right? But you play the teams that are in front of you. They took advantage of those games. They won those games, and they were looking good, and then everything fell apart, especially at that quarterback position. Daniel Jones, hope he's able to recover quickly. That torn Achilles is really awful. And then their backup sustaining that injury in that same game. And this is already on top of Anthony Richardson being on IR. Yeah. So, it's just, it gave me flashbacks to 2022 49ers. And yeah, man, it's tough to see. So overall, it's interesting, and I'm curious to see it.
Yeah, I'm wondering if he gets the Joe Flacco bump, because, if we're being realistic, that's the only way he's going to be able to survive. But I also think that it's possible. I think Shane Steichen's style of offense is going to be like, okay, we'll have some quick options for you. Just grip it and rip it. That's all you got to do. Hope that we can get the ball down the field. But they dealt with so many freak injuries. It's been, Anthony Richardson literally broke his eye with a band, with a workout band. It was a freak thing, an orbital fracture. You can't really plan for those kind of things. So for the Colts, it's just a tough spot. And Daniel Jones was already playing on a leg injury to begin with prior to the Achilles, so that made it tough. So yeah, it just kind of seems like they went all in on Sauce Gardner in the trade deadline. It was a tough spot for them. We'll see. We'll see, like you said. We'll see how they do in Seattle, but Seattle's been, cooking lately, so we'll see how that works out. Okay, so that was going to be my final thought, before moving forward. So did you have any Niners final thoughts before we head out? Okay, bet. So we're going to have a fun exercise here. Then we pivot on over to talk some basketball and the Sacramento Kings. It's that time of year. It's finally time. We can start talking about trade pieces and who, it's not going to be a trade thing about which player, who we're trading people for. This is going to be an exercise of who we would trade based off of a list that we were given. So we stay tuned. We will go over that list and some of our options. All right. We are back to talk some Sacramento Kings here on the Behind the Back podcast. We appreciate all you guys who've stuck with us so far on this episode. So before we get into our Kings exercise that we wanted to get into, I don't even care what their record is anymore. They're probably 2 games back from the 10th seed. We're fine, right? But a milestone got hit, and I think that is the one thing that I didn't give you enough credit for. When Russell Westbrook entered the fold, and I crapped on the move initially. I do think that if there's anyone on this roster getting us noticed at all with any sort of news, it's Russell Westbrook. And, because him and DeMar DeRozan at this stage of their career are hitting accolades now. They've been in the league forever. So now we have DeMar and, Russ both in the top 25 all time in scoring. Russ is doing all the other attributes. He just hit another mark. He's already the league leader in NBA history in triple doubles, but he hit 500 triple doubles in his career, which is unbelievable because the next guy is Oscar Robertson, king, royal, I guess, but 178. That's the next closest dude. So, I want your reaction to Russ getting 500. And I also want to throw this question to you. Do you think any of these younger guys coming up, the guys who are already putting up mad triple doubles like the Lucas, right? Do you think that someone can actually catch 500 triple doubles like Russ?
Nobody's touching Russ. No guard is touching Russ. Let me put it that way. I've come on this podcast and said, this guy's my favorite player. This guy's my favorite player, right? I've been pretty consistent when saying Russell Westbrook was one of my favorite players. I mean, I kind of said it last week in my 20-minute rant on Zach LaVine that, I've had a Russell Westbrook jersey. I still have that thing in my closet. It's 3 sizes too small for me to wear. Otherwise, I'd be wearing it every single week. But I've been a big Russ guy for as long as I can remember, and just the passion that he plays with every single game. There's no reason, Marcos, why this guy with a team that has 6 wins right now in a small market Sacramento city needs to come out here and do the things that he's doing. But he's doing it because that's just who Russ is. Like, he's going to give his all every single season. And, to the people who are saying, like, Russ is back, he never left. The thing was that he was limited. Like, you look at the teams that he was on prior, especially with, like, the Lakers and the Nuggets, they really handicapped him a lot of what he can do. They limited him. They had him in a role where, he wasn't able to just be Russ. And that was one of the things I was the most excited about going into the season, especially after signing him and then hearing Doug Christie hit the podium. He was like, we're going to let Russ be Russ. And I was like, hell yeah, let's go, man, because Russ is a dog, bro. So 500 triple doubles is insane. And the next closest being not even close to half of that. Yeah. I love that it's Oscar Robinson, but bro, Russell Westbrook's incredible. And I genuinely, as crappy as this year has been, am so grateful to have Russell Westbrook on this team because it feels even more special than when we had Vince Carter here. Like, having VC here was cool, right? Because it was like, yo, this is a Hall of Famer. This is a legend. Like, this dude's, he was cool back in the day, but he wasn't putting the same numbers and the style and things that, he was at that time. Russell Westbrook, yeah, he's not having the 50-point triple doubles no more, but he's still a walking problem at every aspect and every level. So I love what I'm seeing from Russ. In a lot of ways, he's been the only watchable part of this Kings team for me all season long. And yeah, man, I'm hyped about it. I really am.
Yeah, you notice, him and Malik, the way that they've been able to kind of make other players better around them. It's nice having a guy who's able to do those things. And I think that with Russ, underappreciated, he's going to be one of those players who doesn't have to win a ring to be in the Hall of Fame, and it's going to be because of just the raw ability that he had, the way he used to dunk on people back in OKC was amazing. And I know we don't get that version of Russ here. Everyone comes to Sacramento after they stop dunking him, DeMar, LaVine, we still got, past prime dunkers is what we like to have here. But I do think that Russ, with what he has brought to the table, is really impressive. And you made a great point about it too. It's like the teams he was on prior, the Nuggets, they were a championship, caliber team. They had him as a 6-ish man, his role was limited. And I think that was part of his excitement to come here in Sacramento is hey, this team might be bad, but I'm going to do my thing and I'm going to show everybody what Russ can do still. Year 18, I thought he was washed. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I was, I vehemently came out and I hated the signing. but it wasn't for Russ himself. It was for the premise of what the hell was this Kings team doing. So, having Russ play the way he is awesome. And I really, congratulations to him. 500 freaking triple doubles is unbelievable. And I hope that we'll probably get a few more in this season. So, I'm excited to see those. But overall, in terms of the rest of the team, again, we're not touching up much on the games because, let's be real, guys. This isn't a fun Sacramento Kings team to talk about right now. There's been a lot of, I wouldn't say drama, just lack of excitement. And I think that now we finally reached that stage where we're getting close enough to the trade deadline where moves are going to start happening here after, I believe it's either December 15th or January 15th. January 15th. So coming up here in the next month, they're going to be able to make decisions and make these moves happen. And we decided to have this conversation about, there was this tweet from NBA Retweet that said the Sacramento Kings will reportedly make the following players available in potential trade talks. Oh, it says past December 15th, I guess, so whatever. But that's what they said here. Domantas Sabonis, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Malik Monk, and Keon Ellis. The Keon Ellis one is interesting because later today we had found out, we'd heard audio, Sacktown Sports 1140 spoke with Scott Perry, the GM of the Sacramento Kings, and he said, a lot of guards on this team. We like what Keon does. We, believe he's going to be a part of our future. We need more players like Keon. And that's an interesting statement, and I believe there's a part of him that believes that, right? But when we look at this list, and if, I know you did a little extra digging and you did a little extra work in this exercise, so I kind of want to get your full scope on it. But if we talk about those 5 players, I don't think any of the 4 guys, not named Keon, Domas, Zach, DeMar, Malik, none of those guys can get moved unless Keon's attached to them. So financially, that's just the only guy that would make sense. So it's like when I did this exercise, I kind of took that into mind. So let's do this real quick. Let's rip off our 5 through 1s, and then we'll discuss depending on who we're furthest off of. So I will go first. In this order, from who we would most, either most want to be traded or believe would be the best trade, however we decided to do that, from 1st to 5th. So the least likely on my list, number 5, I put Malik Monk. And then 4, Keon Ellis, 3, Domas, 2, Zach, 1, DeMar. What about you?
So yeah, I did it. I did the exercise a little bit different, but when looking at this, number 5 for me was Keon Ellis. Number 4 was Malik Monk. Then I went Domantas Sabonis at 3, DeMar DeRozan at 2, and Zach LaVine at number 1.
Okay. So let's start with Zach then. Let's start with your number 1 because there was a part of me that wanted to put him at 1 too. I think the only reason that stopped me was I believe DeMar's contract is the easiest of those top 3 to move, and so that for me did it. In terms of who I want off this team the most, sorry Zach, I'm sorry brother, it's you I want off this team the most, but I think DeMar would give us the best thing. But I want your reason on why Zach is your number 1.
So there's a part of me right now that feels like there is just such a divide. I'm not reporting this. Right. This is a feeling for the record. There's a vibe right now that looks to be developing between Zach and between the organization that is 2 complete different pages. Zach has already come out and he put up 42 against Miami. And the first thing he says when he hits the podium, it was taken out of context. But first thing he says is I'd be doing that more if you got me the damn ball. And, it's these kind of comments that are okay, it leads you to think he's not happy here. He doesn't want to be here and he's ready to move on. And I think, you hear about the Scott Perry a couple of years ago talking about Zach LaVine and him not being a winning player. And then, him ended up being the general manager of the Sacramento Kings. So there's a whole bunch of reasons in my book to look at Zach LaVine, look at the Sacramento Kings organization, look at this ownership group, and now think that like their number one option and priority at the trade deadline could be very well to find a trade, a suitor for Zach LaVine. And even if that's a combo of a couple players, and I agree with you, I think a Keon Ellis would most likely, unfortunately, need to be involved in any of these trades. But I think the number one, like in my book, would be the Zach LaVine trade. And, to kind of cap off my take on that, this is my opinion too. Like, I'm done with Zach. I had that whole rant last week. I got it off my chest. It's been a blast to watch Zach, but I'm done with this experiment. I'm ready to move on too.
No, I agree. And again, it's the contract that nobody really wants. But I do think that I have him at number 2 because I think when he first came here, it was like, this is an immovable contract. But I think there's desperate enough teams out there that if you put him in the right environment, in a team surrounded by defense, it's a possible marriage that could work. But that's also the other disappointing part about this exercise is, with these 5 players in particular, who's really going to shell out, the only players I could see, because I love Domas, but like he is very limited and it requires the same thing. It requires a specific team. Yeah. And that's why I had him 3rd. But for DeMar, I think he's obviously still showing that if you put him on the right team as well, he can go put up 30 for you and be a reason that you guys win a game, especially if you're a team that lacks scoring punch. So like the Clippers, for example, when early on before they really, really tanked here, could have used a guy like him to help, alleviate some of that pressure, even though it doesn't make sense age-wise. But I think that like you have teams that are going to be desperate enough for DeMar, who is the most movable contract that can give us something in return, especially if we pair him with Keon. We'll be like, we're giving you a guaranteed bucket. We're giving you a future asset. So now you need to give us something of at least we need a future asset in return. And if that's a young player, then that's what it's going to have to be, a young forward, a young wing maybe. But that's why I had DeMar at number 1, because I think him, if we're pairing in this exercise, I was thinking, okay, who am I pairing with Keon to move on here? Because Keon would have been 5th because I wouldn't want to trade him. But based off of the reports, I mean, we just heard what Scott said, he says that we want Keon here for the future, but guys do that all the time. They say that, oh, we want this player here. It's to keep him motivated while he's here, and then they get rid of him for nothing, right? So, yeah, DeMarcus Cousins, exactly. So I do think that it's like, that's kind of where I sit on that. So for Domas, my thing is like, there was a report that recently came out. I don't know if it was actually substantiated or anything, but I saw that the Bulls were interested potentially in Domantas Sabonis. And I was like, okay, who would we really trade that makes sense? I'm not trading for Vucevic. That's the same. If you're I don't want that. It's like, that's the same. You're giving me the version of Domas that can't pass and he can score instead. But I don't want that. There's no defense there. And I was like, if I'm getting anyone from the Bulls, like I would want, maybe Josh Giddey in terms of like his size and what he can bring, like versatility wise, but the Bulls just signed him to a big deal, so they're not trading him. Contract wise, it would make the most sense, but and the Bulls are struggling now. They're just losing a bunch of games now. I don't think they've won since Thanksgiving. So they've been kind of struggling a little bit. So maybe they pull the trigger, but it'd be hilarious if we traded with the Bulls, because I guarantee Kevin Huerter's coming back, because that would probably be like the thing that we would have to do. But let's talk about why we both have Malik Monk and Keon Ellis at our 4 or 5. I'm more interested right now because we kind of addressed Keon. Why is Malik in his spot on yours?
So, I mean, Malik's in mine because it was a name that floated around the offseason. It's similar in the way we talked about Zach LaVine and how they want to, the franchise seemingly wants to move in a different direction. If he's on my list, like outside of this, Malik is an untradeable in a lot of ways. I love the energy he brings. I love everything that he whether he truly wants to be in Sacramento or not, he's not out here saying he doesn't want to be here, right? Not that anybody is, but he's showing like he actually gives a shit. Yeah. And that to me matters. So from an effort standpoint, like I would never put him anywhere on this, but because he's on the list, I had to put him somewhere. And between him and Keon, it was a battle for the 5th spot. But for Malik, like he's still young enough. He's still got the juice. He's got that 6-man ability that right now a 6-man is one of the hottest things in the NBA to get. And if you have a solid six man, look at what the Thunder did last year. Look at what a lot of these teams did last year with their six men. You're able to take that a long way if you have some solid firepower coming off the bench. And from that standpoint, like there's a lot of contending teams right now that, could take a swing at a guy like a Malik Monk and say that we are a Malik Monk away from really solidifying ourselves in our conference and really making a run of things here. So I think he's enticing enough to other teams around the league. I think his contract is it's nice enough where it's you're maximizing his value in a lot of senses. It's not an overpay. It's actually an underpay in a lot of ways, considering what you get from him. So I think it's a valuable contract. I think it's a valuable situation. And I think that, Malik is a good adder for a package in a lot of ways. So that's why I had him at 4.
Yeah, I mean, I had him at 5th just because of who he is to this team. And I thought, I fell into the trap of like, oh, let's just get rid of guys because, again, I just wanted to shape out this roster. But then, you watch the games. And like you said, like you enjoy watching Russ because he's one of the few bright spots. He's doing fun things still. You get excited watching the rookies, and I get excited watching Malik Monk and the way he motivates this team and how hard he always plays, even when he doesn't play well. Because I know he didn't shoot well the other night either. So it's just like one of those things that, like, when he's on, he's one of the most electric, exciting players, off the bench to watch. And he just gives his heart all the time. So it's just like, yes, contract-wise, there's a reason why he's on this list because financially it makes the most sense. That is one of your larger contracts that you would offload, and that also with that contract means you're getting a player of potentially similar status in return, which could, you could go 6-man for 6-man with another guy and get a wing player who's, fits the future goals for this team a little bit more. So that's kind of where we had Malik. But I know that you spent a little extra time. You did this exercise for the whole team. And I thought that was a very interesting spot. So, like, if you had, what was your top 5 with the whole team? Then, because I know this was just a list that, we were reading off of, but if you had your original top 5, who would it be?
So let me start by saying when I kind of did this, I went outside of kind of how we structured this. And what I mean by that is I structured this list based on who I would desire to trade the most versus who I desire to trade the least. And that's not saying like I think that we'd get the most value from this guy or anything like that. It's more so like I'm just kind of done seeing you on the team, or it's like, what you're bringing to this team or to this situation is kind of, I'm at a standstill, right? Yeah. So still opinion based, and that's kind of where this list is going. So my top 5, number 1 is still Zach LaVine because I'm freaking done with it. Zach LaVine, get off my team. I'll stay on that. DeMar DeRozan is number 2 still, and the biggest reason for that, I didn't get into that too much, but the biggest reason for him being there is like DeMar's been awesome in Sac. I have enjoyed watching him play here. I'm just kind of done with the ISO ball. I love ball movement. I love watching a team get deep in their bag and go 7-8 passes before getting up a shot. I don't like watching 2 straight years of DeMar DeRozan, being nice with it in ISO, but it's kind of gotten old. So I'm at a point now where I'm like, DeMar, like, appreciate you. Let's get you to a contender. Let's get you to a situation that makes the most sense for you. And I'm kind of done with this. So that's why I had him at 2. Number 3 for me was actually Dennis Schroeder, and I don't think we can even trade him yet. Yeah. But the biggest reason, bro, is like, I like Dennis. I think, if you get any form version of FIBA Dennis, like, you got an MVP. But we're not getting that from Dennis. And granted, I think he's playing a lot better since coming off the bench. I think things are a little bit different. Now he's dealing with that injury. I think it's like a hip flexor, if I remember correctly. So, now it's going to be when he does come back, how rusty is he going to be? Is he going to have to kind of figure things out again? Because he only just found a flow before going out. So I'm just kind of done with that. And I'm like, Russell Westbrook has been holding it down. He's been putting in 40 minutes a night for the Kings pretty consistently now. I can afford to move on from a Dennis Schroeder if available. So he was on number 3. Number 4 was Doug McDermott, because it's like, bro, you're just taking up an end on the bench. Like, I don't really care anymore. Dougie's cool. Love Dougie McBuckets, but like hasn't really done much for the Kings, right? Number 5 was Domantas Sabonis. And this is where it gets juicy. I was at Domantas Sabonis' first game in Sacramento. I went with my dad. It was on the second night of a back-to-back against the Timberwolves. First night of the back-to-back, we got steamrolled because that was when, things went down, trade happened, we were short-manned. We were a struggling team at that time too. We were kind of trying to search for an identity. It was the first season of Mike Brown, so, kind of trying to figure things out, right? And so we get Domantas Sabonis. I go to this game with my dad, and first quarter, I just remember Domas just being this monster rebounder, monster distributor. There was no play calling because they didn't have time to work on it in practice or anything like that. But he was a breath of fresh air is the best way to describe it, because we hadn't seen anything similar to it since Boogie. And so it was exciting. It was cool. And then when he was in Mike Brown's system, and Mike Brown got a full off season with him, and this team got a full off season with him, and they roll out Beam Team 1. And we're like, holy crap, this team's awesome. The ball movement went with him, with Domas being the focal point of the offense, and these dribble handoffs and just the swagger that this team was playing with running through Domas was fantastic. It was ecstatic. I was ecstatic. And then him being, this is where things shift. Him being part of the reason why Mike Brown is no longer in Sacramento. I think at this point, all the reports, it's pretty much confirmed. That already played a part in me feeling a certain type of way, because I love Mike Brown. I think firing Mike Brown was the biggest mistake they've made since firing Rick Adelman years ago. So from that standpoint, it's a sour taste in my mouth. And then you get into this season with Doug Christie. He vouches for Doug Christie. He's one of those guys who's like, we love Doug. Doug's awesome. We hope that he's here next year. He says that after the final game of last season. We come into this year, and what are the reports saying, true or not? Regardless, there's reports saying he's unhappy with his role in the offense. You had a great role with Mike Brown, but where he was maximizing you in a way that no other coach has before. Now you're unhappy again? So I'm kind of at a point where I'm exhausted with Domantas Sabonis. I think he's a solid player. I think, from a rebounding standpoint, at this point, that's all he's good for on a team full of isolation scorers. Let's call it how it is. We're not running the dribble handoffs through him anymore. He's not aggressive enough and not enough of a foul drawer to be an offensive weapon for this team. So it's tough to look at Domas and say, this is a guy we need to keep around, especially when you look at his freaking contract. But that's another reason why it's going to be tough to kind of move him this season. You're going to have to package, and going back to what you said, you're going to have to package a Keon Ellis and this, that, or the other guy that you otherwise might not want to, just to spice up a deal and make it seem a little more enticing for another team. So, that's my top 5. My bottom 2 is what I want to talk about real quick. And that's just Keon Ellis is my number 18 on the 18 spot, and Keegan is number 17. Now, I texted you offline. We know the reasons why Keon Ellis is number 18. I mean, he checks all the pillars. If you haven't listened to Scott Perry talking to Sports 1140, it's really good stuff. And one of the things he mentions about Keon, I'll quickly say it, he checks all the boxes. He fills the pillars, the 6 pillars that they're looking for. So conflicting things, because it's like he's on the trade block, but he's also checking all these boxes for the organization and the direction they want to move in. So we'll kind of see what that shakes out. But that's why he's number 18 for me, as far as who I'd want to trade, first. Number 17 is Keegan, and the reason I wouldn't put him number 18 is because I want to give him a season to kind of find his rhythm again. Rookie year Keegan was fantastic. I think rookie year Keegan, you're catching the league off guard, not just from the team, but you as a player. Rookie year Keegan was good defensively, not what he is now. Offensively, incredible, not what he is now. And so he's completely flipped, from where he was. And we talked about this off the pod a little bit. I texted you about this the other day. I said that I'm giving Keegan this season. I'm giving him this year because of the thumb injury or the finger injury coming into the season. Like, sure, I get it. Your offense might not be there this year because none of our offense is there this year. Next year, your 25 mil kicks in. And next year, especially, we're going to need you not just to be the defensive monster that you are and we love you to be. We need you to hit a little bit more of your jump shots. I mean, he is shooting an awful clip, horrendous clip right now. His first 5 were decent. His last 5 as of right now are just awful. He's sub 35 right now, 35%. Keegan can do better. So I'm at a point right now where it's like, I still love Keegan. I love what he's bringing. This is a young enough player where it's like it's not even a chance. You still want to, there's development to be had. So you want to develop that. You want to work on that. And I think he checks and fills a lot of those boxes and pillars that Scott Perry, kind of outlined. So from that standpoint, it's like you're not ready to move on from him. But next year, like if we're seeing more of the same from Keegan and we haven't seen, I don't even want to say like a step, I almost want to say a jump in his offensive production, I think you need to really kind of evaluate if this is a guy you're paying this much money to and you want to really continue doing that for.
No, I like your bottom 2. I think it makes the most sense. And I agree with your starting 5. I liked that a lot. I wasn't expecting you to have Domas so high, so that was a fun little revelation. I like that you're coming, I know that you were a huge, Domas guy when, like you said, and we were all for it. But yeah, I think that's the vibe. It's like, if you don't want to be here, if you're going to create that kind of energy, like, dip, like, get out of here. Because if you don't want to be in SAC, that's fine. We don't care. Like, then leave.
We're used to it.
Yeah, we're used to it. But no, Keegan and Keon as the 2 least, tradable players, I agree. And like, will that end up coming to fruition with Keon? I mean, I hope that he stays, but I don't know what his relationship with the team is like. I don't know what his relationship with Perry or Christie is like. We'll see reports and stuff, but like, I don't know truly. We don't know truly what is going to end up happening with them because they could say one thing and do another. So I hope that they keep Keon and Keegan around because they are the things that make the most sense for Scott Perry's vision. But that's a great list. I love what you had there. So that was a really good exercise. So do we have any final thoughts here? Any final Kings thoughts before we head out here? I figured as much there, not much to be excited about, but little things here and there. We're still going to, there's still going to be accolades to be achieved. I know Russ is still doing his thing up there. And we'll see what happens here. This next month is going to go pretty crazy. There's going to be rumors swirling now, and injuries are going to happen, which will open up more opportunities. It's going to be hectic. And this year, where especially, you got to keep an eye on those Eastern Conference teams in terms of them being buyers, because in the way the Eastern Conference is, it's anybody's game. So, maybe a desperate enough 4th or 5th seed team is like, hey, maybe we are a Domas or a DeMar or a Zach away, and we are willing to go all out in this trade deadline. So we'll see. That will remain to be seen. But with that being said, guys, we're going to put it away right here. This is episode 113 of the Behind the Back podcast. You can hit us up at behindthebackpod13@gmail.com. For all y'all watching on YouTube right now, all of our descriptions to our socials are up above. For all you audio listeners out there, the links to the descriptions are down below. Please give us a like, subscribe, rate, review, and follow the show. For all you guys who stuck with us to the end, we appreciate all your love and support. Appreciate you riding with us. We got a crazy, season happening here. There's a world where Benny and I could be facing off in the playoffs round 1. There's a world where the Eagles can miss the playoffs altogether, or the Niners can miss the playoffs altogether. There's a world where the Niners can hit the 1 seed. So, and there's a world where the Kings actually do what they say they're going to do and make some trades. So we'll see what happens here in this next stretch. But we will be back. Ben and I will obviously have our post games out for Monday, so stay tuned for those. We appreciate you guys. As always, I am Marcos Conagron. Beside me here, as always, is
Ben the Jet Reds.
All right, y'all. We love y'all. We will talk to you next week. Peace.